Hey guys, tonight we're diving headfirst into the gilded, perfumed, and utterly chaotic world of ancient Rome, seen through the eyes of a very particular professional. Forget gladiators, emperors, or philosophers for a moment. Tonight, our hero
is the ultimate behind-the-scenes maestro, the unsung architect of decadence, the orgy planner. Yes, you heard that right. Someone actually had this job.
They had to schedule the wine, supervise the grapes, organize the entertainment, and for the love of Jupiter, make absolutely sure no one accidentally brought their mother-in-law. It sounds absurd, perhaps even scandalously decadent, but Roman feasting culture wasn't just about indulgence. Oh no, it was about power, status, networking, and, well, quite a bit of strategic nudity. If you think your last party was stressful, just imagine trying to manage a guest list that includes senators who hate each other, poets who recite terrible verse, and potentially someone from the imperial family who could have you exiled for a misplaced olive. You probably wouldn't survive the first hour, let alone the whole day. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your eyes flutter open before the sun has even thought about gracing the Roman rooftops. It's not discipline that pulls you from the meager warmth of your sleeping mat, but a gnawing familiar anxiety.
You, my friend, are Quintus, the planner of tonight's elite Roman banquet, and your brain has already conjured at least 17 things that could go catastrophically wrong before you even have a chance to touch your morning barley. You run,
a hand over your rumpled tunic, the linen feeling thin against your skin, a stark contrast to the silks and fine wools that will adorn your guests tonight. Your mat, still carrying the imprint of your body, seems to mock your fleeting peace. It's barely dawn, and yet the weight of Rome's most powerful, most demanding, and most capricious appetites already rests squarely on your shoulders. You might as well be carrying the Capitoline Hill on your back. A soft scratching at your door sends a jolt through you. It's too early for official business, too early for anything good. Someone has already shoved a scroll, tightly rolled and ominous, under your door. It crackles dryly as you unroll it, each tiny sound amplifying the dread settling in your stomach. You read it with the grim resolve of a soldier unrolling his draft notice, knowing full well it holds a new demand, a fresh complaint, or perhaps a completely unreasonable last-minute change. And true to form, it's from your patron's wife, a woman whose discerning eye could spot a single wilting rose petal at 20 paces. She would like to remind you, with all the delicate menace a Roman matron can muster, that last time the rose petals were yellow, not red, and guests noticed. Oh, they noticed. You haven't even touched your barley yet, a simple, wholesome meal meant to ground you before the madness, and already you're juggling flaming amphorae in your mind, trying to avoid being burned by the fickle flames of aristocratic taste. Outside your modest quarters, Rome is just beginning to stir. The distant rumble of ox carts on cobbled streets, the faint cries of street vendors, the lazy stretch of a stray dog. It's a world waking up, unaware of the meticulously planned, utterly decadent, and potentially scandalous spectacle you are about to orchestrate. You, however, are already mentally navigating a minefield. Today's guest list includes not only distinguished senators, renowned artists, and profound philosophers, but also two courtesans who, by some twist of fate, absolutely despise each other. And then the rumor that sends a chill down your spine. Someone from the imperial family might be attending. Of course, no one ever tells you who. Could be a minor cousin, could be Caligula himself, fresh from a night of devising new tortures for grapes. Either way, you'll be the one blamed if someone's peacock isn't sufficiently massaged, or if the lighting isn't just so to flatter their imperial profile. The historical records, surprisingly, rarely mention the sheer existential dread involved. In this profession, they just talk about the feasts themselves. It's a truth rarely acknowledged. The meticulous planning behind Roman opulence was a high-stakes gamble where your career, and sometimes your life, hung in the balance. You step into your sandals, the leather cool against your skin, and begin the day like any good Roman orgy planner, with a healthy dose of dread and a wax tablet that might as well be a battlefield map. Your first order of business, even before the sun crests the Palatine Hill, is staffing. You sent runners yesterday, little specks of anxiety darting through the crowded streets, to book the essential performers, the flute girls whose haunting melodies would fill the atrium, the dancers whose graceful movements would captivate the guests, a solitary, contemplative harpist, and for the grand finale, that eccentric man who walks on his hands while balancing a tray of figs on his feet, a true spectacle. But as always, none have confirmed. You sigh a long, weary sound that seems to echo in the still morning air. You strongly suspect at least two of them are currently, shall we say, enthusiastically enjoying the early morning. Delights of the Subura, Rome's chaotic, vibrant, and notoriously dissolute marketplace. It's Rome's equivalent of calling a last-minute caterer who works out of a food truck in a back alley, only to find they've decided to have a creative sabbatical mid-service. Many historians still debate how these planners managed such unreliable
talent. Perhaps they simply embrace the chaos. Then there's the food. The food, your list, scrawled on a papyrus scroll that feels heavier than lead, reads like a culinary dream or nightmare, depending on your palate.
You've requested plump oysters, imported fresh from the Bay of Baiae, their shells gleaming with the promise of the sea. They must be alive when they arrive, or at the very least, convincingly moist. One bad oyster, and half the forum will be whispering that you, Quintus, poisoned Senator Gaius. You even sent a follow-up note to the seafood vendor, reminding him that last time half the oysters were already dead on arrival, and one particularly dramatic guest declared it an omen. A terrible, terrible omen from Neptune himself. He's still recovering from the financial fallout, and you, Quintus, were very nearly recovering from a severe reprimand. And, of course, the infamous honey-roasted dormice. A staple of Roman decadence, these tiny creatures rolled in poppy seeds and dipped in honey are meant to be plump, not stringy. You've asked for 50, knowing perfectly well you'll be lucky to receive 35, and that half of those will still twitch faintly. It's a grisly detail, perhaps, but such was the Roman taste for spectacle even on a platter. You add roasted peacock, whose meat famously tastes like shoe leather but looks magnificent with its feathers reattached. Stuffed sow's udder, a delicacy that probably should have stayed in the kitchen, sweet dates from distant Judea, succulent figs from Carthage, and pungent cheese wrapped in fragrant vine leaves. You also scribble down a frantic reminder, no garum accidents near the bread this time. The last event's anchovy-scented rolls nearly caused a riot among the more sensitive-nosed senators. A truly bizarre historical fact, many guests actually preferred their bread without the fermented fish sauce, and don't forget the cushions. The soft, plush cushions, so vital for comfortable reclining. Last time, one of the divans, a flimsy thing you had repeatedly warned against, collapsed under a particularly toga-heavy magistrate. The fallout was intensely political. with whispers of poor planning and disrespect for the Republic. This time, the couches must be sturdy enough to handle whatever happens on them. And you, Quintus, know exactly what happens on them. The sun is barely up, a soft golden light just beginning to filter through the cracks in the shutters, and you're already sweating into your linen tunic, the fabric clinging uncomfortably to your skin. You take a long, deep breath, trying to steady the frantic drumbeat of your heart. You remind yourself you are a professional, a maestro of madness, a choreographer of chaos. It's going to be a long day, but the cushions will be fluffed, the wine will be poured, and the guests will never know how close you came to screaming. Not yet, anyway. It's still early, but already you find yourself unrolling a fresh scroll, a new updated guest list, bracing yourself for disaster. You read the updated guest list slowly, each name a delicate tap on a taut drum, bracing for the inevitable discord. It's not a mere seating chart, it's a meticulously balanced social powder keg, sprinkled with olives on top for good measure. You see Lucius Calpurnius Piso's name there, naturally. He comes to everything, a fixture at every significant gathering, always insisting on reclining on the summer locus, the center couch, the place of honor, preferably right next to someone else's wife. The problem, as always, is that his own wife, Aurelia, is also coming. She wasn't invited, of course. No one ever invites Aurelia. But that's never stopped her before, has it? You make a mental note, swift as a gladiator's blade. Separate couches, definitely separate wine sources, and absolutely no harp solos while they are both in the same room. Last time, during Senator Scipio's naming ceremony, she threw a whole jug of garum across the triclinium. The stain is still faintly visible on that one mosaic tile, despite weeks of scrubbing by your most diligent slaves. Historians still debate whether her actions were true rage or calculated social disruption, but you, Quintus, know it was pure, unadulterated chaos. Next, Senator Petronius Arbiter has accepted. A witty man, a dangerous man known for his cutting tongue, and not always in a poetic sense. He once described another poet's work as a slow death written in meter, a phrase that, to your unending exasperation, caught on. You'll need to seat him far from Junius Blaccus, whose poetry Petronius once critiqued with such savage precision that Blaccus considered an early retirement to a provincial farm, away from the cutting remarks of the urban elite. Perhaps a strategic olive bowl between them, or maybe a particularly dull guest whose conversation could absorb Petronius's sharp wit. The mind of an orgy planner is a fascinating labyrinth of social engineering, you muse, more complex than any military campaign. Then you spot it, lurking in the middle of the scroll like a venomous snake. Decianus and two guests unnamed. The vagueness is offensive, almost an insult to your meticulous craft. Could be respected clients bringing along newly acquired philosophical tutors. Could be gladiators, fresh from the arena, still smelling of sweat and sawdust. Could be, well, given Roman tastes, it could be a giraffe in a toga, for all you know. You scribble flexible seating West End next to the entry, a desperate plea for adaptability in a world that craves rigid order and move on. The sheer unpredictability of Roman high society, where anyone could show up with anyone, makes your job less about planning and more about constant improvisation. Now for the entertainers. 4 flute girls, their instruments gleaming like polished silver. 3 dancers already oiling their limbs in anticipation, and those infernal mime twins. That's already one more performer than Lucullus approves of. He, a man of refined tastes, and even more refined snobbery, considers mimes barbaric and unbecoming of a proper feast. His mistress, however, a woman of surprisingly unsophisticated tastes, finds them delightful, and his mistress's approval, as you well know, is absolutely critical to his reputation and, more importantly, his peace of mind. So, the mime twins stay, a silent testament to the precarious balance you must maintain between elite preferences and personal whims. The guest list, you realize, isn't just a set of names. It's a living map of ancient Roman tension, politics, power, lust, family feuds and vendettas, all reclining together on silk-covered couches, drinking from the same communal bowl of spiced wine. And of course, the real terror, the one that makes your stomach clench into a tight knot. Someone important who wasn't invited. You can already hear the whispered accusations carried on the perfumed breezes of tomorrow's gossip. It was intentional, a public insult. I'll never lend him my bar slaves again. The horror. You roll up the scroll, the parchment groaning under the pressure of your grip. You immediately unroll a new one, drawing arrows, adding warnings, circling names with frantic energy. You're not planning a party, you're managing a live diplomatic simulation complete with aphrodisiacs and roasted dormice. Still, you've done this before, you'll do it again. You just hope this time no one stabs anyone over couch placement, not like last spring during the Venalia Rustica festival. The historians gloss over these domestic skirmishes, preferring to focus on grand battles, but you, Quintus, remember the sheer terror of that night, the shattered amphorae, the cries of betrayal, echoing in the atrium. With the guest list theoretically finalized, or at least stable enough not to immediately implode, it's time for the next crisis: provisioning. Planning a Roman banquet of this magnitude isn't just about pouring wine and lighting torches. It's about curating a menu so decadent it makes the gods feel underdressed, a feast so lavish it would make a modern Michelin-starred chef weep with envy and probably a little horror. Your list is already 3 wax tablets, long, each meticulously inscribed with your precise demands. Let's start with the basics. Wine, not just any wine. It must be Falernian. Aged for decades, its rich amber color promising luxury, and expensive enough to make your sponsor wince. You write 3 amphorae Falernian. 2 of Cuban for show, its bold, dark color impressive, though the taste is less so. 1 of vinegar, for the guests who arrive late and truly don't deserve the good stuff. A subtle but effective act of defiance, a small nod to your own sanity. Most historical accounts focus on the quantity of wine consumed, rarely the strategic quality control implemented by the poor sole managing it. Next, the oysters, imported fresh from Baiae, a coastal town famous for its aquaculture. They must be alive when they arrive, their shells tightly closed or at least convincingly moist, giving the illusion of freshness. You send a terse note to the seafood vendor, reminding him, not so subtly, that last time half the oysters were already dead, their shells gaping, and one particularly superstitious guest declared it a dire omen, causing a minor panic. He's still recovering from the financial blow, and you're still recovering from the patron's icy glare. Then there's the honey-roasted dormice, a true staple of Roman decadence, these tiny creatures, plump and juicy, rolled in poppy seeds and dipped in honey, are more than just food. They are a statement. They must be plump, not stringy, a subtle distinction that only the most refined palates would notice. You ask for 50, knowing perfectly well you'll receive 35, and that half of those will still twitch faintly. A macabre detail that rarely makes it into the glossy history books, but one you, Quintus, deal with regularly. You add roasted peacock, magnificent to behold but notoriously tough, stuffed sow's udder, a peculiar delicacy that required specific preparation to be palatable, sweet, sticky dates from distant Judea, succulent figs from Carthage, and pungent cheese wrapped in fragrant vine leaves. You also scribble down a vital reminder: no garum accidents near the bread this time. The last event's anchovy-scented rolls nearly caused a riot among the more delicate senators, their palates offended by the unexpected fishy notes. For dessert, you'll need candied nuts, delicate almond cakes, and some sort of visual spectacle. Perhaps a pastry shaped like the Colosseum, grand and impressive, filled with live songbirds that flutter out when the cake is cut. You'll figure out the baking, logistics later. For now, the sheer audacity of the idea is enough. This kind of over-the-top display, a favourite among Roman elites, was a testament to their wealth and their desire to impress, a truth less discussed than their military victories. Then comes the perfume budget: myrrh, rose oil, saffron water, enough incense to make a Vestal virgin dizzy. The air itself must reek of wealth, temptation, and the kind of confidence only achievable by people who bathe in imported rose oil. You make a crucial note: discreetly scent the latrines. It's a detail most guests wouldn't consciously notice, but its absence would be acutely felt. You stare at the list. It looks more like a military requisition than a menu, and it costs more than a decent villa outside Ostia. But this is Rome. Opulence is expected. Gluttony is style. And your patron's reputation depends on guests being too stunned by luxury to notice that the music is slightly out of tune and someone, probably Senator Piso, spilled wine on the marble lions. You hand the scroll to your fastest runner, a young man with legs like a centaur and the unfortunate habit of forgetting sugared grapes. No substitutions, you instruct sternly. No apologies. And if you forget the sugared grapes again, I'm feeding you to the flamingos. You hope he understands. You're half serious. Time to pray to Mercury, god of commerce and delivery. Let's clear something up right away, something that seems to haunt the popular imagination about Roman excess. A vomitorium isn't what you think it is. No, Romans didn't build special rooms just to purge mid-feast and make room for more peacock, like some kind of ancient marble-tiled bulimia clinic. That's a later myth, probably invented by someone who watched Romans eat and simply couldn't imagine another explanation for their prodigious appetites. The term vomitorium in reality refers to the entrance and exit passages in Roman amphitheatres, where crowds literally spewed out after events, a logistical marvel of crowd control. It makes for a less scandalous story, doesn't it? But that doesn't stop modern imaginations from picturing marble-tiled throw-up lounges filled with perfumed nobles and feather fans, a scene that would make even the most hardened modern party planner blush. That said, Romans did overindulge, and if a guest quietly excused themselves to step out and refresh, no one asked questions. It was an understood part of the culture of excess. So, as an orgy planner, it's your job to make sure the entire venue, from the grand atrium to the intimate triclinium to the discreet garden alcoves, is ready to absorb the consequences of excess in style. You, Quintus, must ensure that even the most enthusiastic moments maintain a veneer of dignity. It's about creating an environment where even the most undignified acts feel dignified. You begin the inspection, your sandals echoing softly. On the polished stone floors, each step a testament to your meticulousness. The banquet hall floors, adorned with intricate mosaic tiles, must gleam. That particular section, the one with Bacchus riding a panther in a rather jaunty pose, needs a quick polish. You personally stoop down, your back protesting slightly, to remove a stubborn grape stem stuck in the grout from last week's gathering. Ah, the memories. Such a small detail, but you know your standards. And you know that if a senator were to stumble and blame a sticky grape stem for his fall, it would be your reputation on the line. The latrines, those essential, often overlooked spaces, are next. They are meticulously cleaned, perfumed with subtle rosewater and cedarwood, and stocked with fresh sponges on sticks ready for use. The lemon vinegar solution, a Roman staple for hygiene, is refreshed, its tart scent cutting through the heavier perfumes. A small, flickering candle burns gently near the doorway, not for light, but for dignity, a silent sentinel guarding against impropriety. It's the little things, you often think, that truly define Roman luxury. Out in the courtyard, where the evening breezes will waft through, you double-check the fountain basins. Guests have a peculiar habit of reclining too far and toppling in after their fifth goblet of Valerian. Last time, a general's wife, bless her inebriated heart, nearly drowned in the koi pond. You've since removed the koi. You can't remove the general's wife, unfortunately. A small victory, you suppose. This kind of practical foresight, anticipating every possible mishap, is rarely taught in history classes, yet it was the bread and butter of your existence. You pass through the perfume room, a tiny, fragrant haven where oils and salves are arranged, like an apothecary for indulgence, rose, cinnamon, myrrh, each scent promising a different kind of allure. You sample one, dabbing a tiny bit on your wrist, and your skin smells like a love letter to Venus herself. Perfect. The air must reek of wealth, temptation, and the kind of confidence only achievable by people who bathe in imported rose oil. Next, you inspect the vomitorium myth room, or rather, what the guests imagine a vomitorium to be. It's a quiet hallway with a strategically placed curtain, a comfortable chair, a discreet bronze basin, and a polite slave stationed silently with a fan. It's not called that, of course. It's simply referred to as the retreat or the quiet corner. But everyone knows what it's for. And it too must sparkle, clean, scented, and luxurious, ensuring that no matter how indulgent things get tonight, no one leaves this party feeling undignified. If they do purge, they'll do it surrounded by polished marble and tasteful murals of satyrs frolicking among nymphs. That, Quintus, is your promise to your patron, a silent guarantee of refined debauchery. The irony isn't lost on you. Your job is to meticulously plan chaos, and even the expulsion of that chaos must be impeccably managed. Many historians would call this an evolution of Roman social graces, a testament to their refined nature. But you know it's just good planning. It's mid-morning now, and the sun is higher, casting longer shadows across the atrium floor. Now comes the most delicate part of your job. Not selecting wines, which is merely a matter of taste and budget. Not managing noblemen, which is a matter of political cunning, but addressing the staff. A Roman feast of this magnitude doesn't just happen. It requires people, lots of people, and none of them woke up today hoping to be part of another nobleman's indulgent fever dream. Most historical texts focus on the lavishness, rarely the sheer manpower and the delicate balance of fear and respect required to command such an undertaking. You gather the team in the atrium, the vast space suddenly feeling too small for the sheer number of bodies. 23 individuals, each with a specific role, each a cog in the intricate machine of Roman entertainment. Most are slaves, some born into the household, knowing no other life than serving, some bought for the specific purpose of carrying trays, pouring wine, or simply looking attractive while remaining silent. A few are paid performers, their freedom a fragile thing, dependent on their talent and your whims. All are stressed, their faces a mixture of apprehension and weary resignation. First up, the cupbearers. You assign them their zones, the central triclinium, where the most important guests will recline, the periphery lounge for those seeking quieter conversation, and the west garden, where secrets will bloom alongside the roses. Dilute the strong wine unless told otherwise, you remind them, your voice firm but not harsh. Some guests think they can handle full Falerian. They cannot. You've seen the consequences of over-enthusiastic pouring, misplaced togas, impromptu recitations of bad poetry, and even minor brawls over the best pieces of roasted peacock. A fun fact rarely discussed is the sheer volume of wine consumed. Diluted wine was a necessity, not just a preference. Fanbearers are next, a crucial role often underestimated. Their timing can make or break a guest's comfort, or even their reputation. One gust too strong, and you've blown out a candle, plunging a corner of the triclinium into darkness, or worse, exposed someone's carefully guarded secrets. A misplaced toga, an illicit touch. One too weak, and a senator sweats into a silk. Cushion a grave offense in this climate. Neither is acceptable. Their movements must be fluid, almost imperceptible, like the whisper of the breeze itself. Fruit attendants, yes, they're a thing. They are instructed to refresh trays constantly, ensuring a vibrant display of grapes, figs, and dates. They must peel grapes only upon request, a sign of ultimate indulgence, and discreetly remove any fruit that begins to resemble a raisin, lest a discerning guest complain about the lack of freshness. It's a role that demands constant vigilance against the slow decay of nature. The Romans, you often ponder, had a peculiar obsession with perfection, even in the most mundane aspects of their feasting. Then there are the musicians, already bickering. About tempo, their instruments clashing like a pre-battle skirmish. You separate the flute girl from the lyre player. Last time, their disagreement turned into a duet so awkwardly discordant that the guests stopped mid-feast to offer them marriage counseling, a truly mortifying spectacle that almost ruined the evening. The dancers, all oiled limbs and dramatic eyeliner, lean languidly against a pillar, pretending not to listen, but their ears are undoubtedly twitching. You run through their cues anyway, your voice sharp. No improvisation, you say, making eye contact with each of them. We are not reliving the Banquet fire incident. A minor historical footnote, that. A drunken bacchanalian priest accidentally setting fire to a curtain. You remember the panicked screams vividly. Finally, you make eye contact with the youngest slave, a boy no older than 10 who's responsible for collecting discarded sandals. He looks terrified but resolute. You nod once, a silent acknowledgement of his importance, and he nods back, a silent pact made between two cogs in a very large, very demanding machine. He will not fail you. He rarely fails. You give your usual speech, the one you've refined over countless feasts, each word carefully chosen to inspire a mixture of dedication and fear. Tonight, you are invisible unless summoned. You are silent unless spoken to. You are grace, rhythm, and elegance incarnate. You pause for dramatic effect, letting your gaze sweep over their faces. Or I swear by Jupiter, I will assign you to sponge duty until Saturnalia. Sponge duty, the ultimate threat, a truly unglamorous and deeply unpleasant task that makes even the most hardened slave blanch. There's a palpable pause, a collective holding of breath, then a simultaneous, weary nod. Briefings are complete. You take a breath, the air in the atrium suddenly feeling lighter, as if a great weight has been lifted. The human engine behind Roman debauchery is oiled, powdered, and aligned. For now, it happens every time, a predictable rhythm in the unpredictable symphony of your profession. The invitations go out, meticulously sealed with your patron's signet ring, promising an evening of unparalleled indulgence. The wine arrives, amphorae, stacked like soldiers, each one a testament to luxury. The silk cushions are plumped, invitingly soft, hiding the faint stains of previous triumphs and disasters. And just when you begin to feel marginally in control, when a whisper of calm dares to settle in your weary mind, someone hurries into the atrium, out of breath, their face etched with that familiar, frantic look.
"Quintus!" they gasp, their voice barely a whisper, yet it rings like a gong in your ears. "The musicians, they haven't arrived." Of course they haven't. You grit your teeth, the familiar taste of exasperation sharp on your tongue. You specifically
Booked a flute girl, the one with the surprisingly melancholic gaze, 2 cithara players, a harmonious duo usually, and 1 backup aulos duo in case of exactly this situation. You planned for it, you accounted for it, and yet here you are, staring down the barrel of silence at a party where silence is not merely awkward, it's considered a civic offense, a personal affront to the very essence of Roman conviviality. An evening without music? Unthinkable. It's like a Roman bath without warm water, fundamentally flawed. You send your most reliable runner, young Lucius, a boy with legs like a gazelle and a surprising knack for navigating the city's underbelly, to the Subura district. Rome's chaotic marketplace of noise, smells, and bad decisions, where everything from illicit gambling to clandestine love affairs thrives. Find them, you instruct, your voice low and urgent, alive, conscious, and dressed. You don't even bother to ask why they're late. You already know. They're either still asleep in some questionable lodging, too drunk to walk after a spontaneous street celebration, or most likely tangled in a romantic entanglement that began at last night's Saturnalia rehearsal, and by the looks of it, never quite stopped. Historians often romanticize the lives of Roman artists, but you know the gritty reality. Unreliability was as common as a bad hangover. The dancers, ever dramatic, are now complaining, throwing their hands up in exaggerated despair. Without musicians, one laments, we cannot rehearse. Our art, it withers. The poets, on the other hand, are delighted, assuming this sudden void means more stage time for their interminable odes to grapevines and abstract concepts. You quickly squash that idea, a swift, decisive gesture. No one, you state flatly, wants Gaius's ode to his mother's third marriage recited at a party where people are eating sugared dormice. The thought alone is enough to curdle wine. You consider contingency plans, running through them like a gladiator assessing his weapons. The house cook, a gruff man whose culinary skills are only matched by his surliness, knows 2 songs on a cracked reed pipe, though his rhythm is interpretive. A nearby slave, quiet and unassuming, has a surprisingly decent singing voice, if kept off the wine, a big if, given the circumstances. Worst case scenario, you could hum in rhythm while someone shakes a jar of lentils, creating a sort of minimalist, agrarian beat. You close your eyes for a brief second, praying to every deity you can think of, Bacchus, Apollo, even the obscure god of forgotten instruments, that it doesn't come to that. The idea of a senatorial orgy soundtracked by lentils is, frankly,
unbearable. Then, like ghosts emerging from a cloud of incense, the musicians appear.
fashionably dishevelled, vaguely apologetic, and smelling faintly of spikenard and poor decisions. One of the flute girls is missing a sandal, her bare foot scuffing lightly on the marble. The other looks as though she's had her heart broken by at least 3 senators in quick succession, her eyes a little too bright, her movements a little too languid. Still, they're here. You breathe a silent sigh of relief, a microscopic tremor in the carefully constructed facade of your calm. You assign their stations, herding them like a nervous flock of exotic birds. One in the atrium to greet guests with gentle melodies, one near the main dining hall for a more robust sound, one in the garden for subtle ambience, where whispered secrets will mingle with the soft notes. You stress your rules again, just in case the wine has blurred their memories. No dramatic tempo shifts, no dirges, absolutely no impromptu solos.
Unless someone's actually dying. They nod, sort of, their eyes still a little unfocused. You exhale a long, slow breath. Crisis averted, for now, but you keep your eye on the lyre player.
He's tuning it slowly, lovingly, far too lovingly for someone who isn't about to ruin everything with an improvised love ballad about a particularly attractive olive. You make a mental note, swift as a lightning bolt. Station him near the door, easy removal. Sometimes the most important part of the music is the absence of certain notes. It's a subtle art, often overlooked by those who merely listen. If music is the soul of the party, then seating is the strategy, the very nervous system of the entire affair. You're not just placing guests on couches, you're navigating rivalries, rekindling or extinguishing romances, and managing enough unspoken tension to collapse a marble villa if a single wrong move is made. The Roman triclinium, the classic 3-couch setup, technically seats 9. Comfortably, it's closer to 7, especially if no one brings their pet leopard, which, surprisingly, happens more often than you'd like. You begin by sketching it all, out on your wax tablet, the stylus scratching softly as you map out the intricate dance of social dynamics. You mutter to yourself like a general planning a siege, each name a unit to be deployed, each couch a strategic position. The center couch, that's where the status goes. The summa locus, the place of honor, is reserved for the guest of highest rank, the one whose ego is most fragile and whose patronage is most crucial. Unfortunately, tonight, 2 people think they are that person. Senator Piso, with his ancient lineage and booming voice, and Governor Croesus, whose recent military victories have swelled his already considerable self-confidence. Both claim the title by birth, by marriage, and by sheer unshakable self-belief. You'll need to decide who gets the top spot and who gets mildly poisoned wine, figuratively speaking, of course. Perhaps a slightly more diluted vintage, a subtle message of their secondary importance. This constant negotiation of social hierarchy, unseen by outsiders, was a core part of Roman elite life. You also need to keep lovers near each other, but not too near, lest their public displays of affection become tiresome. Unless, of course, they're ex-lovers, in which case they must be divided by an entire bowl of olives, a surprisingly effective social barrier, and someone charming but utterly boring in between, a human buffer designed to absorb any stray sparks of resentment. It's a delicate balance, this art of social distancing Roman style. Then there are the seat fillers, charming but ultimately forgettable citizens who exist solely to keep the peace and fill awkward silences. You place a wealthy equestrian, a man of limited wit but vast fortune, next to a dramatic poet, a master of florid verse, but little common sense. The equestrian won't understand the poem, and the poet will love the attention. It's a symbiotic arrangement, a social ecosystem where everyone, even the most tedious, serves a purpose. It's a little-known fact that many Roman hosts had a rotating roster of such individuals ready to deploy at a moment's notice. You assign courtesans to strategic locations near the lonely, the rich, or the recently divorced. Their presence is a subtle invitation, a promise of light-hearted companionship. You also assign 2 of them to the west side of the triclinium. Not because it matters, but because it will inevitably bother Aurelia, and she needs something to complain about other than the wine temperature or the shocking lack of properly yellow rose petals. Of course, you leave room for unpredictability. Someone will arrive uninvited. Someone will switch seats to make a political statement. Someone will spill wine and demand a full reshuffling of the entire triclinium, as if the universe revolves around their clumsiness. You leave a few empty cushions, strategically placed, plausible deniability, last-minute flexibility, and a convenient place for the poet to sulk if his latest ode is met with less enthusiasm than he anticipates. With the seating plan finally finished, a masterpiece of social chess, you admire your work like a sculptor regarding his marble, knowing full well someone will hit it with a hammer before sunset. You roll up the scroll, the wax warm beneath your fingers, and hand it off to your most trusted assistant with one final desperate instruction. Place name tags in wax, and for the love of Jupiter, don't let anyone switch them. You know they will, but at least you tried. That's all anyone can ask of a Roman banquet planner. If the orgy is a performance, the kitchen is the backstage arena, and it smells less of theatrical glamour and more of fire, figs, and utter panic. By mid-afternoon, the entire household is a choreography of controlled culinary chaos. You step into the bustling space, the air thick with heat and the clatter of bronze pots, the shouts of frustrated cooks and the sizzle of rendered fat. The main cook, a formidable man with a perpetually flour-dusted tunic and a scowl that could curdle. Milk is a former naval cook. He's been navigating the treacherous waters of Roman banquets for decades, transforming himself into a domestic warlord, ruling his culinary domain with an iron fist. He's already shouting at a terrified assistant, his voice booming over the din about the proper stuffing ratio for roasted dormice. "Honey, poppy seeds and I will personally throw you into the Tiber," he roars, his face reddening. You nod, a small, approving gesture. Excellent. Everything's precisely on schedule. The sheer pressure of preparing such elaborate meals, often in rudimentary conditions, is a historical detail often glossed over in descriptions of Roman feasts. The main attraction tonight, the pièce de résistance, is the peacock, roasted whole, its magnificent feathers meticulously reattached for dramatic flair. It sits on a massive silver platter, looking utterly magnificent, a testament to both your patron's wealth and your meticulous planning. It tastes, you know from bitter experience, like shoe leather, and is mostly served so rich guests can brag about chewing something that had once strutted like a diva, its iridescent tail fanning out in arrogant display. A fun fact, peacocks were often bred purely for their visual appeal at banquets rather than their flavour. The kitchen is also prepping the infamous pig, which has been stuffed with live birds. Yes, you heard that right. A real thing, a favourite of the more theatrical Roman hosts. You roast the pig, slice it open at the table, and surprise! Doves fly out. It's impressive, unsettling, and only mildly traumatic for the doves, who generally flutter around in a confused panic before someone opens a window. It's a trick that never fails to elicit gasps and scattered applause. Platters of glistening figs, sweet dates, and honey cakes, some shaped like tiny gods, line the counters, awaiting their grand entrance. A pastry shaped like the Colosseum, an architectural marvel in edible form, is being painstakingly glazed by a team of pastry chefs. In one corner, a young slave, distracted by the tantalizing aroma, accidentally eats part of it. He's promptly reassigned to grape peeling duty, a fate considered particularly tedious. Justice, Roman style. In another corner, someone is stirring a vast vat of garum, that infamous Roman fish sauce made from fermented anchovies, salt, and the tears of anyone within sniffing range. Its pungent, briny aroma permeates the air, a constant reminder of its ubiquitous presence in Roman cuisine. You remind them loudly, your voice cutting through the clamour to keep it away from the bread. One garum-soaked loaf ruined last month's affair, causing a 5-day feud between two magistrates who blamed each other for the culinary abomination. The intricacies of Roman food preparation, including the dreaded garum, are a rarely explored facet of daily life. Meanwhile, the wine storage is being meticulously arranged. Amphorae of precious Valerian, clearly labelled, but subtly, of course, for the main guests. Cheaper vintages, disguised by artful presentation, are set aside for those who won't know the difference, or perhaps for those who arrive late and are already too far gone to care. You make sure the amphorae are labelled subtly. You've been burned before, literally, by an angry consul with an overly sensitive palate who discovered he'd been served a common vintage. Every corner of the kitchen hums with tension, a controlled symphony of culinary panic. Platters are being polished to a mirror sheen, sauces reduced to their essence, meats larded to perfection, and pastry horns filled with mysterious, aromatic concoctions. You're everywhere at once, your senses alive, sniffing, tasting, directing, your mind a whirlwind of minute details. You're not just managing a meal, you're managing an edible spectacle, a theatrical feast that's expected to impress, intoxicate, and miraculously survive being hurled during an argument. As you walk past the roaring oven, the head cook barks, his voice raspy from shouting, "If anyone drops another dormouse, I'm feeding them to the peacock." You nod, a small smile playing on your lips. Things are going well. For a Roman banquet, this level of controlled chaos is the highest compliment. It's a strange truth, but one you've embraced. You'd think selecting a scent would be easy, wouldn't you? A simple choice between rose and lavender, perhaps. But in ancient Rome, perfume isn't merely a pleasant aroma. It's a statement, a declaration of wealth, status, and sometimes intent. Tonight's banquet is no place for amateur olfactory choices. Your guests won't just taste and see opulence. They need to smell it. The air itself must reek of wealth, temptation, and the kind of sublime confidence only achievable by people who bathe in imported rose oil and probably own a fleet of merchant ships. The Romans, you often reflect, engaged all five senses in their pursuit of pleasure. So you descend into the storage chamber, a cool, dark room where tiny alabaster jars line the shelves like sacred relics. The air here is thick, heavy with the ghosts of 1,000 exquisite scents. Myrrh from distant Arabia, its earthy, resinous notes promising ancient luxury. Cinnamon oil from Ceylon, warm and spicy, hinting at exotic lands and daring voyages. Saffron from Cilicia, golden and sweet, evoking fields of precious blooms. And then there's an experimental blend you've been working on, daringly named Essence of Nile Lotus, which, to be perfectly honest, smells like an expensive pond. You've sniffed every single one twice, your nose a finely tuned instrument of discerning aroma. You begin composing the fragrance strategy, like a battle plan for the senses. Each room, each space, must have its own distinct olfactory narrative, guiding the guests through the evening's progression. The atrium will smell of citrus and cedarwood, sharp, fresh, a clean, invigorating opening note designed to awaken the senses upon arrival. It's a first impression, crisp and inviting. The main triclinium, where the bulk of the feasting and debauchery will occur, that's for heavier, more enveloping scents. Myrrh, frankincense, a touch of rich musk, a blend that should whisper, "You might make a mistake tonight, and that's okay." It's an aroma that encourages indulgence, a seductive backdrop to whispered secrets and bold flirtations. The air should be thick with the promise of pleasure, a fragrant veil over any potential impropriety. Historians often discuss the visual extravagance of Roman feasts, but the olfactory landscape was just as crucial to the experience. The private garden alcoves, those secluded nooks where secrets will be exchanged and togas will be strategically misplaced, they get the truly seductive blend.
Rose, soft and alluring. Cinnamon, spicy and warm. And just enough spikenard to make someone faint if they stand too close. Its heady fragrance intoxicating and disorienting. These are the scents of illicit encounters, of boundaries blurring,
of inhibitions dissolving in the perfumed night air. Then there are the perfumed oils for guests' hands and feet, a common courtesy at high-end Roman gatherings. You assign a diligent attendant to warm them slightly. No one wants cold oil. Cold oil is for barbarians, for rustics. Warm oil is for seduction, for luxury, and for perfectly flattering candlelight. And yes, you've scented the latrines too, of course. You're not a barbarian either. You instruct your staff, your voice low but firm. Don't over-scent. We want luxury, not suffocation. If a senator walks in and blames the smell for his nosebleed, we've gone too far. It's a delicate balance. achieving opulence without inducing an aristocratic migraine. One of the dancers, a striking woman with eyes like obsidian, requests a personal scent, something hypnotic. You give her a blend so potent it once caused a minor riot during a Saturnalia feast, with guests literally swooning at its intensity. You warn her, a slight smirk playing on your lips. She merely smiles, a knowing, mischievous glint in her eyes. She'll use it anyway. You walk through the halls, trailing your nose like a trained hound, testing the invisible currents of scent. The atmosphere is beginning to bloom, evolving from a sterile space to a living, breathing entity. Warm, spiced,
Opulent.
a perfumed breeze wafts through the triclinium like a whispered secret, promising indulgence and a night of unforgettable sensations. You nod. This is what indulgence smells like. Scented, lit, and fully armed with aroma, the house is nearly ready to receive its guests. All it needs now, you think with a final weary sigh, is chaos. That it will get in abundance. It's late afternoon now, the sun dipping lower in the Roman sky, casting long golden shadows across the cityscape. The air inside the villa smells of warm citrus, roasted meat, and very expensive decisions. You've assigned every task, threatened everyone necessary, mostly jokingly, you tell yourself, and bribed the harpist to stay sober until at least dessert, a small fortune in silver, but a necessary investment. The weight of the day, the sheer volume of details presses down on you, but there's a quiet satisfaction too, a pride in the meticulously crafted illusion you've created. Now comes the moment of truth, the final walkthrough you start at. The grand entrance, where oil lamps are being lit one by one, their flames flickering gently across the polished marble, casting a golden, inviting glow that says, "You're not poor, not tonight." A young flower boy, his hands laden with fresh petals, sprinkles them at the threshold. "Not too much now," you remind him gently. Last time, someone slipped on lavender and sued their way into the atrium, complaining of a spiritual imbalance. The bronze fountains are running, their water murmuring a soft, inviting song. Grapes are pyramided in absurdly impractical displays, piled high on gleaming platters, testament to abundance, not utility. Pillows have been beaten, fluffed, and positioned with an unnatural, almost military symmetry. You move one slightly, just a fraction, to make it look less staged, more effortlessly decadent. It's important that luxury feels organic, even if it's taken 32 hours, 2 minor breakdowns, and the sacrifice of several unfortunate dormice to achieve. The aesthetics of Roman leisure were paramount, the constant performance of effortless wealth. Next, the triclinium, the main event space, the heart of the coming revelry. Tables are low, inviting guests to recline in comfort. Recliners are perfectly angled, each cushion dusted, perfumed, and strategically rotated to hide any wine stains from last month's senator's birthday disaster. A night you still have nightmares about. You do a quick bounce test on each cushion, soft enough to comfort, firm enough to survive. Activity. You inspect the tableware, gleaming silver goblets, bronze platters intricately etched with scenes of bacchanalia, blown glass amphora shimmering in the lamplight. Bread, still warm, from the ovens, is artfully arranged in woven baskets. Cheese, pungent and rich, is sweating slightly, but you decide it adds authenticity, a rustic charm amidst the opulence. You quietly remove a beetle from a fig, swift as a shadow. No one saw, it never happened. Such small, unseen acts of vigilance are countless. In the garden alcoves where whispers will be exchanged and secrets will bloom, the lighting is soft and ambiguous, just dim enough to be flattering, to soften the harsh lines of age and weariness, just bright enough to avoid accidents, involving potted plants and dignity. A servant fans incense, the fragrant smoke curling upwards, adding to the ethereal effect. You pause, letting yourself enjoy the brief, fleeting moment of perfection you've created. You spot a small detail. A flower out of place, its petals slightly askew. You fix it. Another. A curtain that's not quite even, betraying the meticulous Arrangement, you adjust it. A final sweeping check. You inhale deeply, the scent of myrrh and rose, roasted meat and spiced wine filling your lungs. You listen. The faint murmur of the fountains, the distant clatter from the kitchen, the rustle of silk as a servant passes. You walk through the space like a guest, trying to see it through their eyes. It's beautiful, ridiculous, excessive, perfect. You sigh, a long, quiet exhalation that seems to carry all the exhaustion of the day. For a fleeting moment, you let yourself believe it's all under control, that the carefully constructed illusion will hold, that the chaos, when it comes, will be exactly the kind of beautiful, manageable chaos you've planned for. Then, as if on cue, someone rushes into the atrium, their face a mixture of apology and dread. "Quintus," they whisper, their voice barely audible over the growing hum of anticipation. "The guest of honor, he's arrived early. And he brought 3 extra wives. Of course he did." You smile tightly, a strained, practiced expression that doesn't quite reach your eyes. You straighten your tunic, smooth down your hair, and with a final, bracing breath, you step into the fray. The first knock is not so much a knock as it is a dramatic thump, followed by a burst of boisterous laughter echoing through the atrium. You take a breath, the scent of 1,000 meticulously planned details filling your lungs. Here we go. The door opens. A slave, trained to perfection, pulls back the heavy curtain with just enough flourish to impress but not overshadow the entrance. Your first guest, Lucius Calpurnius Piso, strolls in like he owns the place, despite not paying for any of it. He smells of strong wine, raw ambition, an imported cologne that likely cost more than a soldier's annual wage. He greets you with a wide, knowing grin and a conspiratorial wink. "Tonight, my friend," he booms, his voice carrying through the spacious atrium, "we make Bacchus blush." Behind him, a trailing entourage, a handful of courtesans, a minor poet whose latest ode was suspiciously similar to one written 2 decades.
Ago, and a man carrying a small lyre who may or may not be invited. You decide not to check. Some battles are best left unfought.
A little-known fact is that wealthy Romans often arrived with large retinues regardless of invitation. Guests begin pouring in now, a shimmering river of flowing robes, gold-threaded tunics, embroidered sandals, and expressions of affected boredom. They've all arrived early, of course, to subtly demonstrate their importance, and they've all had at least one drink already to show they're relaxed, unbothered by mere formalities. You mentally recalibrate the wine rations, a tiny tremor of panic running through your calculations. A slave offers perfumed towels, their scent mingling with the rising tide of body odors and expensive oils. Another presents delicate rosewater, poured from a silver ewer. One guest, particularly avant-garde, refuses both, demanding instead a small amphora of something more Dionysian. You give him spiced wine, he calls it intellectual. You don't correct him. The point is to keep them
Happy, not enlightened.
The garden begins to fill with murmurs, introductions, subtle judgments, and hushed conversations that are somehow louder than actual conversation. Someone's already asked where the flute girls are, an eager glint in their eye. Someone else
Is eyeing the fruit pile like it owes them money, a dangerous glint.
You keep moving, nodding, adjusting, your eyes constantly scanning the shifting landscape of social interaction. You separate 2 senators who haven't spoken since the infamous goat insult incident last year. You notice that Governor Croesus is reclining far too close to someone else's wife, his hand dangerously near her silk tunic. The poets are gathering in a corner like storm clouds, already beginning to recite their latest, uninvited verses. One of the dancers, perhaps a little too eager, strays too early into the center of the atrium. You snap your fingers, a sharp, almost imperceptible sound. "Not yet," you mouth silently. Timing matters. If everything begins too soon, it loses its mystery, its allure. If it begins too late, guests complain, their impatience turning into sullen glares. You want suspense. You want smoldering scandal. You pass a serving tray, discreetly pluck a grape, and keep walking, the sweet burst of juice, a tiny private rebellion. You spot one guest already snoring gently on a cushion, blissfully unaware of the chaos around him. Another is polishing a dagger with butter, a peculiar habit that has always unnerved you. So yes, it's going well. For a Roman orgy, controlled chaos is the highest compliment. And tonight, you're almost insulted by how smoothly things are running. Almost. The lyres are tuned. The flute girls are finally sober, or at least balanced. And the dancers are oiling their limbs like they're about to go into battle. You give the nod. The entertainment begins. A hush falls over the triclinium, a rare moment of collective anticipation. As the first dancer steps forward, golden veils flowing, anklets chiming, eyes fixed somewhere between divine inspiration and complete
apathy, she begins to move.
It's graceful, hypnotic, and exactly the level of theatrical sensuality that makes elderly senators feel poetic and young patricians feel utterly lost. The flute joins in, slow, spiraling notes that float through the perfumed air like incense, weaving a spell of calm over the growing clamor. For a brief, beautiful moment, the entire feast slips into rhythm. Chewing slows, conversations hush. Even the poet, bless his heart, stops trying to recite. But then, of course, something goes off script. It always does. You, Quintus, know this in your bones, a deep, weary certainty that settles over you like a toga, too heavy for the heat. Just as the dancer reaches her peak of graceful, almost spiritual movement, a guest, a young patrician named Marcus, notorious for his theatrical demands, loudly declares, "A reenactment, the myth of Leda and the swan with real swans." Another, a rival senator's son, immediately counters, "No, Orpheus."
In the underworld, with real torches this time. A third, clearly influenced by too much undiluted Phalerean, suggests something truly ambitious involving naked gladiators, a water jug, and interpretive juggling.
You smile politely, a fixed, unchanging mask of professional geniality. You assure them, with a voice as smooth as polished marble, that it's all part of the plan, a secret segment reserved for later, a truly grand finale. Meanwhile, the mime eat. Twins, who were specifically told, explicitly instructed to wait until the third wine course, enter early. They glide into the triclinium, their painted faces expressionless, and immediately begin miming an exaggerated scene of seduction involving a fig and a sausage, a grotesque parody that would make even Bacchus blush. Half the room erupts in bewildered laughter. The other half looks utterly confused, trying to decipher the profound artistic statement of a sausage being romantically pursued by a fig. One particularly enthusiastic man, clearly mistaking your opulent banquet for the grand theatre of Pompey, claps like a maniac, shouting, "Bravo!" You resist the urge to pour wine directly into your eyes. It's a constant battle, keeping your composure. The dancer, surprisingly unperturbed, continues her performance. The musicians, seasoned veterans of chaos, try to adapt, their melodies shifting with a fluid grace that belies the internal panic. You spot the harpist improvising something mournful, possibly because she's just realized she's playing in the wrong key, a subtle discord lost on most, but not on you. Then the unthinkable. Someone throws a peach. At first, it seems accidental, a clumsy gesture from an overly enthusiastic guest. But then another guest, a stern-faced matron known for her sharp wit and even sharper throwing arm, retaliates, flinging a fig back with surprising velocity. Now it's participatory. The subtle dance of polite feasting has devolved into a low-grade fruit skirmish. You step in quickly, your hand raised, a silent command for attention. "A symbolic offering to Bacchus," you declare, your voice ringing. With authority, your face beaming with a well-practiced, slightly unhinged joy. A spontaneous act of devotion. Everyone cheers, delighted by your sudden, dramatic interpretation of their impromptu food fight. Crisis averted. You make a mental note, etched in your memory with indelible ink. Never serve throwable fruit again. The entertainment surges forward, a vibrant, perfumed wave of music, movement, whispers, and laughter. A flame dancer performs near the pool, her fiery movements casting flickering shadows on the water. A flute girl stumbles, recovers gracefully. A guest, clearly overcome with poetic sentiment, proposes to a statue of Venus, offering it a delicate almond cake. It's chaos, gorgeous, perfumed, theatrical chaos. And this is where you shine, Quintus, orgy planner, stage manager, mood wrangler, fig diplomat. You adjust a lamp, nod almost imperceptibly to a server, and glide silently through the shadows as if any of this was intentional, as if every unpredictable twist was merely another stroke of your artistic genius. It's a dance, a delicate balance between control and letting go, a skill rarely taught in the academies but essential for survival in Roman high society. By the third course, the wine is no longer merely being served, it's being worshipped. The guests, now gloriously, delightfully, and utterly draped across their couches like tipsy gods and goddesses, are in full bloom. Their laughter is too
loud, their flirting too bold, their grip on basic facts, like who they came with or what year it is, increasingly tenuous.
This is the sweet spot, the zenith of the evening, where inhibitions melt away like snow in the Roman sun. You've instructed the servers to strategically dilute the wine, a subtle but crucial act of social engineering. Valerian is strong, a powerful elixir. One amphora, if consumed undiluted, can convince a senator to sing terrible poetry, confess to tax fraud, or declare undying love for a particularly plump dormouse. You water down the wine for the ambitious, for those whose careers might still be ruined by a drunken outburst. But for the already hopeless, for those who came to simply drown their sorrows or unleash their inner satyr, you leave it pure, a liquid key to deeper oblivion. It's diplomacy by the jug, Quintus, a strategic art form unrecorded by most historians. The conversations grow less philosophical, more personal, and increasingly ridiculous. A young patrician, flushed with wine and self-importance, loudly compares his wealth to Jupiter's divine treasury, detailing the exact number of slaves he owns, as if that were a measure of spiritual worth. A merchant, whose sudden fortune makes him dangerously bold, brags about owning 3 villas and, implausibly, a camel that he claims can recite Virgil. A woman in pearls, her eyes sparkling with mischief, whispers a joke about the emperor's feet, a dangerous line to cross. You pretend not to hear, your face a picture of serene indifference. If she gets exiled, you'll miss her. She's great with seating arrangements. Across the hall, a poet, his toga askew, is trying to seduce a philosopher using verse that sounds suspiciously plagiarized from Catullus, but badly. You walk past just in time to hear him declare, with immense gravity, "Your eyes are like olives, dark and briny, full of forgotten wisdom." You do not intervene. Some acts of poetic desperation are best left to their own devices. Meanwhile, 2 courtesans, their smiles fixed and razor-sharp, are locked in a passive-aggressive compliment battle, each saccharine word a dagger. Each forced laugh carries the subtle scent of strategic murder. One gifts the other a fig, a gesture that seems innocent but, given the context, feels loaded with unspoken meaning. You take a mental note, remove all figs by dessert, and of course, in the back corner, someone has decided to start a drinking game involving gladiator trivia. "Name 3 famous gladiators or drink," someone shouts, their voice slurred. A minor senator, clearly not well versed in the glorious intricacies of the arena, tries to fake his way through an answer, mumbling something about Spartacus and 2 others. He's booed mercilessly. He drinks. He collapses gently into a pillow, a beatific smile on his face, and begins quoting Virgil, surprisingly accurately. In the garden, a particularly pompous guest is giving a speech. He believes he's being profound, sharing deep philosophical insights. He's actually just explaining at excruciating length how many slaves it takes to keep a marble fountain immaculately clean. No one stops him. It's tradition, a peculiar Roman rite of passage. The wine flows faster now. Amphorae are opened like promises, their contents splashing into silver goblets. Cups are never empty. Boundaries blur. Names are forgotten. Stories are exaggerated, then re-exaggerated, each retelling more outlandish than the last. The orgy part of the orgy, in the modern sense of uncontrolled revelry, is inching closer, a warm, inebriated tide rising around you. And still, you monitor the flow like a seasoned general commanding his troops, You subtly adjust lighting in dimly lit corners. You slow the music when things get too raucous. You even manage to stop a particularly confused guest from drinking perfume, a small victory in the grand scheme of things. The banquet is heating up, the air thick with anticipation, and the scandals you sense are just beginning to simmer. By this point in the evening, the party has transitioned from structured decadence to unstructured mythological nonsense. The initial veneer of high society has dissolved under the relentless assault of Falernian wine and unbridled ego. Guests have largely stopped using names, referring to each other as Apollo, Venus, or, in one particularly memorable instance, that guy with the peacocks, who, ironically, isn't even here tonight. Someone with an unexpected burst of creativity has fashioned a laurel wreath out of table herbs, its fragrant leaves already wilting under the heat of the revelry. You spot 3 people in the main fountain. The one you painstakingly ensured was perfectly clean this morning. One appears to be trying to baptize the others, chanting something about the purity of Bacchus. You decide not to ask. Some mysteries are best left unsolved. This is the moment where most hosts, even the most seasoned, would panic, their perfectly planned evening spiraling into unmanageable chaos. But you, Quintus, you sip your watered wine calmly, a small knowing smile playing on your lips, and begin quiet damage control. This is where your true artistry lies, in guiding the chaos, not suppressing it. The gladiator wrestling reenactment, which started innocently enough as a playful mock battle, has moved dangerously close to the intricate mosaic of Neptune, a priceless artwork adorning the floor. You intervene gently, your voice soft but firm, offering a tray of glistening dates as a distraction. It works. They fall for it like toddlers with tattoos, their attention immediately diverted by the sugary sweetness. You notice 2 guests missing, their previous couch now empty. You find them under the table, arguing passionately about stoicism while rubbing each other's feet, a peculiar blend of intellectual discourse and tactile indulgence. You cough discreetly, a polite, almost imperceptible sound. They nod, startled,
and immediately pretend to be looking for a lost bracelet, their faces flushed.
The human capacity for simultaneous profound thought and utter silliness always amuses you. In the west alcove, the flute girl, the one with the melancholic gaze, has burst into tears. A guest, clearly meaning to be complimentary, asked if her instrument was tuned, which she, in her delicate artistic state, interpreted as a metaphor for something else entirely, perhaps her soul or her past romantic failures. You send over the backup lyre player, a silent, comforting presence, and a complimentary handful of pomegranate seeds, their ruby color a small, sweet consolation. She recovers, her tears slowly subsiding, perhaps realizing the simple truth of the comment. These minor emotional dramas are constant, a subplot to the main event. In the atrium, a particularly insistent guest is trying to teach a marble bust of Julius Caesar how to play dice. Another is attempting to wear a serving platter as a hat, declaring himself King of the Olives. A group of younger patricians have started a foot race through the peristyle, narrowly avoiding several potted plants and one very annoyed slave. You navigate this swirling vortex of inebriated humanity with the practiced ease of a seasoned sailor on a stormy sea. You're a ghost among them, observing, subtly intervening, always present but rarely noticed. It's a strange intimacy you share with your guests. You know their weaknesses, their hidden desires, their ridiculous quirks, all revealed under the liberating influence of strong wine and theatrical indulgence. It's a truth about history that is rarely discussed, the personal, vulnerable side of the powerful. You see Senator Piso attempting to engage a Vestal Virgin in a philosophical debate about the merits of public baths versus private springs, his arm draped a little too casually round her shoulders. You quickly send a servant with a tray of fresh figs, strategically placing it between them, forcing him to shift his position. The Vestal, ever serene, accepts a fig with a polite nod, her eyes twinkling. You also notice that Governor Chrysis is now engaged in a passionate, if slightly slurred, discussion with a statue of Hercules, gesturing wildly with a half-eaten roasted dormouse. You make a mental note to check the statue for grease marks later. The air is thick with perfumes, the clatter of silver against bronze, and the rising crescendo of laughter and half-formed sentences. The mime twins, having completed their fig and sausage, Odyssey are now attempting to mime the creation of the universe with surprisingly dramatic and clumsy results. They accidentally knock over a small flower pot, sending soil scattering across a freshly polished mosaic. You sigh inwardly but show no outward reaction. It's a small price to pay for such creative expression. Many Roman hosts would have them flogged. But you, Quintus, appreciate the effort, even if it comes at a minor horticultural cost. You even spot a guest trying to teach a house cat how to play the lyre, a truly unique form of entertainment. The cat, predictably, is unimpressed. This is the peak, the glorious, uncontrolled pinnacle of the evening, the point where the meticulous planning of the day finally gives way to the beautiful, unpredictable chaos of human nature. Your job isn't to stop it, but to ensure it unfolds stylishly. You adjust a lamp here, subtly direct a server there, always gliding through the shadows, a silent guardian of sophisticated debauchery. This is what you live for, the unspoken challenge, the subtle triumph over the potential for true disaster. And as the night deepens, you know that the true stories, the ones that will be whispered for weeks, are just beginning to unfold. The ones that historians will never fully grasp. As the night deepens, the atmosphere in the triclinium becomes less about refined enjoyment and more about raw, uninhibited human expression. You, Quintus, find yourself moving through a swirling tapestry of whispered confessions, boisterous laughter, and the occasional surprisingly articulate philosophical debate sparked by too much wine and too little sleep. The air is thick with the scent of roasted meat, spilt wine, and the heady perfumes you meticulously selected. This is the climax of the Roman feast, a controlled explosion of senses and social boundaries. You overhear a particularly vivid argument between two esteemed senators about the correct way to pronounce a Greek word, a debate that quickly devolves into accusations of ancestral barbarism and threats involving inherited debts. Their voices rise, their faces redden, and a small, delicate silver cup is flung across the room, narrowly missing the flute player's head. You send a slave with a fresh amphora of wine, strategically placing it in the path of the flying cup, turning a potential disaster into a minor spill. It's a delicate dance, always one step ahead, always anticipating the next act of inebriated passion. Historians often record the grand speeches and political maneuvers of Roman senators, but rarely the petty squabbles over linguistic nuances fueled by strong drink. In another corner, a group of younger guests have started an impromptu wrestling match on one of the recliners, their togas slipping precariously, revealing far too much for polite society. You dispatch a few silent, efficient staff members, subtly distracting them with trays of exotic fruits and whispered invitations to a private dice game in the next room. They vanish, lured by the promise of new diversions, their boisterous energy, redirected before it could fully unravel the delicate social fabric of the evening. It's a common tactic, this redirection of youthful exuberance, a little-known secret of successful banquet management. The music, once a gentle backdrop, has now become more assertive, almost frenetic. The drummers pound a rhythmic beat, and the flute players deliver soaring improvisational melodies that seem to reflect the escalating energy of the room. The dancers, their movements wilder now, twirl through the assembled guests, their veils catching the light of the flickering oil lamps. One of them, a stunning woman named Lyra, performs a particularly daring move, balancing an amphora on her head while executing a series of dizzying spins. The guests roar their approval, throwing garlands of flowers at her feet. It's a moment of pure, unadulterated spectacle, a testament to the sheer dedication of these performers. You notice Senator Piso, still surprisingly lucid, engaged in a heated discussion with the courtesan you seated near him. He's gesturing wildly with a roasted dormouse, using it as a prop to emphasize his points. She listens with an air of amused patience, her eyes twinkling. It seems your strategic placement of the troublemaker has yielded interesting results. Perhaps a new alliance is forming, or perhaps it's just the wine talking. You make a mental note to observe their interaction closely in the coming days. The social climbing and networking that occurred at these feasts were as important as the food and entertainment, a fascinating blend of pleasure and politics. Suddenly a crashing sound from the kitchen, followed by a startled shout. Your heart
lurches. The kitchen, your fortress of controlled chaos, should be a silent, efficient machine by now.
You glide through the bustling triclinium, your face impassive, as if you merely wish to check on the availability of more roasted snails. What you find is a scene of minor catastrophe. One of the newer kitchen slaves, overwhelmed by the pressure, has dropped an entire platter of honey cakes, sending them scattering across the floor like discarded gold coins. The head cook stands over him, hands on his hips, his face a thundercloud. "Jupiter's beard!" he bellows. "You've ruined the Emperor's
favorite."
You step in, calm amidst the storm. "Accidents happen," you say, your voice surprisingly gentle, diffusing the tension. You stoop down, pick up a relatively unscathed cake, and pop it into your mouth. "Delicious," you pronounce, chewing thoughtfully.
A little dust never hurt anyone. The cook stares at you bewildered, then barks at the slave to clean it up. Crisis averted with a dash of unexpected nonchalance. A truly ancient Roman trick turning disaster into deliciousness. Back in the
main hall, the revelry continues its upward spiral. A group of younger guests are now engaged in an impromptu game of hide the olive, which mostly involves throwing olives at each other and laughing hysterically. You've seen worse, much worse. You see the poet, the one who tried to seduce, the philosopher with olive-eyed verse, now attempting to climb onto a pedestal, seemingly intent on delivering an epic recitation from atop the bust of Augustus. You quickly send over a cupbearer with an extra-large goblet of wine, signaling him to offer it to the poet. The prospect of more wine proves too tempting to resist, and the poet descends, abandoning his artistic ambitions for immediate gratification. The sheer unpredictability of human behavior under the influence of alcohol was a constant challenge, one that required both quick wit and ample supplies. You notice one of the guests, a prominent merchant, has fallen asleep on his couch, snoring. Gently, a half-eaten grape clutched in his hand. He's reached his limit and perhaps found his peace. You instruct a slave to discreetly cover him with a thin linen sheet, ensuring his comfort and, more importantly, his dignity. Even in the height of revelry, there are always those who succumb to the siren song of slumber. The night is drawing to a close, at least for some. The laughter is still loud, but there's a softer edge to it now, a weariness settling in. The music has shifted to slower, more languid melodies, a gentle invitation to unwind. You, Quintus, remain vigilant, ever the silent maestro, guiding the final acts of this magnificent, chaotic, and utterly Roman performance. Your eyes scan the room, taking in every detail, every interaction. This is your legacy, the fleeting, unforgettable moments of pleasure and excess you orchestrate, and as you watch them, bathed in the soft glow of the oil lamps, you allow yourself a small, genuine smile. You've done it. Again. The night wears on, a tapestry woven with threads of indulgence and the ever-present hum of Roman revelry. You, Quintus, are a ghost in the shadows, a silent orchestrator, observing the shifting currents of the banquet. The air, once thick with the scent of roasted meats, now carries the fainter, sweeter notes of exotic fruits and the subtle tang of too much wine. The initial burst of formal entertainment, the elegant dancers, the precise musicians, has given way to the more spontaneous and often more chaotic forms of amusement preferred by guests thoroughly steeped in Bacchus's embrace. A group of younger patricians, emboldened by their third, or was it fourth, amphora of Valerian, have decided to stage their own theatrical production. They're attempting to reenact a scene from Terence's comedies, but their improvised dialogue is more akin to drunken barking than refined Latin. One young man, stripped down to his tunica, attempts a dramatic monologue on the nature of love, completely missing his cues and occasionally stumbling over the strategically placed pillows. His audience, largely in agreement with his sentiments regardless of their coherence, applauds wildly. You discreetly send a slave with a tray of fresh water, hoping to temper their enthusiasm, but it's a futile gesture. The stage is set, the actors are in place, and the show, however dreadful, must go on. It's a fascinating glimpse into the improvised entertainment of Roman private life, often overlooked by grand historical accounts. You catch sight of Senator Piso, still surprisingly engaged, but now he's attempting to teach one of the courtesans how to play a rather complicated board game, something involving strategy and numerical calculations. Given their current state of inebriation, the game pieces are mostly being used as improvised projectiles in a playful, if somewhat aggressive,
manner.
The courtesan, with an air of amused patience, bats away the flying pieces, her laughter tinkling through the hall. You smile faintly. Perhaps this night has, against all odds, forged an unexpected, if temporary, alliance. The ability of a banquet to bridge social divides, even for a few hours, was a powerful, if transient, phenomenon in Roman society. Then a sudden, piercing shriek from the gardens. Your head snaps up. A minor panic ripples through the triclinium, the raucous laughter momentarily silenced. You glide towards the source of the disturbance with practiced calm, your steps silent, your expression unreadable. What you find is a young woman, a guest's niece, standing wide-eyed next to a carefully cultivated rosebush. A small, harmless garden snake, startled by the noise, has slithered out from under the foliage. She, however, interprets it as a monstrous beast, a harbinger of doom, a direct message from the Furies. You quickly assess the situation. The snake, while not poisonous, is undeniably present. A blessing, you declare, your voice ringing with practiced authority. A sign from Aesculapius. The gods are with us tonight, bestowing good health and fortune upon this noble house. You pick up the small snake with a practiced hand, carefully placing it into a terracotta pot, transforming a moment of genuine terror into a divine omen. The girl, still trembling, looks at you with awe. The guests, now reassured and even a little impressed, murmur their approval, their superstitions temporarily appeased. It's a fascinating aspect of Roman culture, the constant interplay of reality and superstition, and your role, Quintus, is often to manage that delicate balance. Backy, in the main hall, the festivities are once again in full swing. One of the lyre players, the one you had initially planned to station near the door for easy removal, has taken center stage. He's no longer playing mournful ballads. Instead, he's launching into a surprisingly energetic, improvised song about the joys of fermented fish sauce, much to the amusement of the now thoroughly intoxicated guests. He even manages to rhyme garum with carpe diem, a poetic feat you wouldn't have thought possible. You decide to let it slide. His earlier awkwardness has given way to an endearing, if slightly off-key, enthusiasm. Sometimes the best art is born from unexpected places. You notice a few more guests are now asleep, their exhaustion winning the battle against the endless flow of wine. They lie draped across couches, resembling classical statues in repose, a peculiar blend of elegance and utter collapse. You instruct your quiet, efficient slaves to drape thin linen sheets over them, a subtle gesture of dignity and care. Even in the midst of wild revelry, a good host ensures their guests, even the most incapacitated, maintain a semblance of decorum. It's a testament to your professionalism, Quintus, that even in their unconscious state, your guests appear to be enjoying themselves. The sheer exhaustion of a Roman feast, both for guests and hosts, is a detail that historians rarely emphasize. The night continues, a symphony of indulgence, and you, its conductor, watch over it all, a silent guardian of Roman revelry. As the hours bleed into the deep night, the feast reaches its roaring crescendo, a magnificent spiraling descent into pure, unadulterated Roman revelry. The boundaries of decorum, once meticulously maintained, have now blurred into oblivion. The air is thick with the scent of wine, the lingering sweetness of overripe fruit, and the musky aroma of exertion. You, Quintus, move through this swirling vortex of indulgence like a ghost, your senses heightened, your mind racing, always anticipating the next delightful disaster. This is the climax of the night, the culmination of all your planning, and now your focus shifts from orchestrating perfection to subtle, almost imperceptible, damage control. One of the younger senators, fueled by what must be his 10th goblet of undiluted Valerian, decides to demonstrate his prowess in competitive poetry recitation. He clambers onto the central dining couch, swaying precariously, and bellows an ode to his own magnificent beard, a truly agonizing display of self-indulgence. His voice, once a dignified baritone, is now a tuneless roar, and his meter is wildly
off. You see the other guests, their eyes glazing over, a few even attempting to stuff grapes into their ears. You quickly signal to the flute girl, the one who can play the most mournful melodies.
She understands instantly, launching into a deeply melancholic tune that, while beautiful, is utterly unsuited for a boastful beard ode. The jarring contrast works. The senator, disoriented by the sudden shift in mood, stumbles off the couch, muttering about the unbearable pathos of modern music. Crisis averted. A little-known fact is that many Roman hosts employed musicians not just for entertainment, but as a subtle means of social engineering, capable of steering the mood of the room. Meanwhile, the mime twins, clearly inspired by the earlier fruit-throwing incident, have decided to escalate their performance. They are now miming a wrestling match between a particularly large oyster and a surprisingly agile snail, using actual seafood from a nearby platter. The resulting slime and scattered shell fragments are creating a hazardous, if amusing, mess on the polished marble floor. You dispatch a slave with a broom and a subtle nod, indicating that the cleanup should be done with minimal fuss, but perhaps with a bit of extra attention to the summer locusts. You can't have the guest of honor slipping on snail guts. The sheer theatricality of Roman private entertainment, often devolving into spontaneous and messy performances, is a facet rarely explored in the solemn halls of historical study. You spot Senator Piso, who, instead of engaging in more political intrigue or philosophical debate, is now leading a sing-along. He's belting out a bawdy drinking song at the top of his lungs, his arm around a startled statue of Mercury, whose expression seems to perfectly capture the general bewilderment. His voice is surprisingly off-key, but his enthusiasm is infectious. You let this one go. Sometimes allowing a controlled bit of absurdity is the best way to prevent genuine chaos. It's a moment of unexpected, unpretentious joy amidst the calculated excess. Suddenly a series of frantic whispers ripple through the room. A guest, clearly in an advanced state of inebriation, has mistaken a particularly plump dormouse for a small, furry pet, and is now attempting to comfort it, murmuring sweet nothings. The dormouse, understandably, is less than thrilled with this unsolicited affection. You quickly send a servant, disguised as a dormouse handler, to gently extricate the poor creature, ensuring its safe return to the kitchen, or at least to a less affectionate corner of the villa. The peculiar interactions between Romans and their exotic food items, often blurring the lines between delicacy and companion, are a fascinating footnote in historical accounts. The air is thick with the smell of spilled wine and the general effluvia
of an overindulgent evening. Yet, amidst the rising chaos, you remain the calm center, a silent, watchful presence.
You subtly adjust the lighting, dimming a few lamps in areas where romantic encounters seem to be blossoming, and brightening others where boisterous games threaten to get out of hand. You signal for more incense to be burned, its rich fragrance covering the less pleasant odors that are now beginning to emerge. This quiet art of manipulation, of guiding the flow of the party without ever seeming to interfere, is your true genius. It's the difference between a memorable night and a truly regrettable one. You see a glint of metal. Someone, a young man, is attempting to open a bottle of wine with a small, decorative dagger. You intervene smoothly, offering him a proper corkscrew, a silent suggestion that while daring acts are admired, impalement is not. He grins sheepishly, accepting the corkscrew. The night is a symphony of fleeting moments, some beautiful, some absurd, and all of them under your invisible hand. This is the art of the orgy planner, Quintus, a role of quiet power and immense responsibility in the heart of the Roman Empire. As the sun dips below the horizon, painting the Roman sky in hues of fiery orange and soft purple, the banquet hall itself seems to pulse with a life of its own. The initial formality has completely evaporated, replaced by a raw, uninhibited energy. You, Quintus, observe the scene, a seasoned general surveying his victorious and slightly inebriated army. The air is now heavy with the mingled scents of sweat, perfume, and the lingering aroma of rich food. The music has shifted from structured melodies to wild improvisational bursts, mirroring the increasing disarray of the guests. One of the more flamboyant guests, a wealthy merchant recently returned from Alexandria, has taken it upon himself to perform an interpretive dance. He believes he is embodying the spirit of Dionysus, complete with dramatic gestures and a strategically draped silk veil. In reality, he's mostly just stumbling, occasionally knocking over a cushion or narrowly missing a potted plant. His performance culminates in an attempt to drink directly from the mouth of the marble statue of Venus, an act that manages to be both sacrilegious and, surprisingly, uncoordinated. You let him be? Sometimes the best course of action is simply to let the chaos run its natural, amusing course. The sight of a prominent merchant performing a drunken Dionysian dance was, surprisingly, not uncommon at lavish Roman feasts, reflecting a cultural acceptance of extreme indulgence. The conversations have now devolved into a cacophony of overlapping voices, each guest attempting to outshout or outwhisper the other. Secrets are being spilled with the same abandon as wine. A senator, previously known for his stoic demeanor, is now confessing his undying love for a particularly large olive, declaring it the most perfect and virtuous of all fruits. Another guest, convinced that he has discovered a hidden talent, is attempting to juggle 3 live quail, a perilous endeavor that sends feathers and frantic chirps scattering across the floor. You dispatch a servant to discreetly collect the escaped birds, ensuring they don't become impromptu entertainment for the more predatory guests. You notice Senator Piso, still surprisingly mobile, has somehow acquired a small lyre and is now serenading a group of giggling courtesans with an off-key rendition of a tragic Greek ode. The courtesans, to their credit, feign rapt attention, occasionally bursting into fits of laughter that may or may not be entirely genuine. It's a strange, almost endearing sight, this powerful man, reduced to a bumbling minstrel by the intoxicating power of the night. A little-known fact is that many Roman politicians used these feasts to subtly display their human side, often with mixed results. Suddenly, a crash from the far corner of the triclinium. Your eyes dart instinctively to the source. A column of stacked wine amphorae, which you had meticulously balanced earlier, has toppled. Wine gushes across the marble floor, a spreading crimson tide. It's a significant loss, both financially
and aesthetically. Panic would be a natural reaction for any lesser man, but you, Quintus, simply nod to a group of vigilant slaves who immediately spring into action, armed with sponges and buckets. They work quickly, efficiently, absorbing
the flowing wine, their movements a testament to countless hours of training and countless similar spills. The floor is cleared, the wine absorbed, and the scene is restored with such speed and discretion that many guests barely notice the incident, their attention too consumed by their own revelry. It's a remarkable feat of behind-the-scenes efficiency, a ballet of cleanup. The air is thick with the scent of perfume, the clatter of silver against bronze, and the rising crescendo of laughter and half-formed sentences. The mime twins, having exhausted their repertoire of fruit and sausage scenarios, are now attempting to lead a spontaneous dance line, their painted faces expressionless as they guide stumbling senators and giggling courtesans in a clumsy, if enthusiastic, procession through the triclinium. One of them accidentally bumps into a statue of a faun, sending it wobbling precariously. You wince inwardly, but the statue holds. Another minor victory. You pass a servant, their face a mixture of exhaustion and amusement, who whispers, "Senator Crassus is attempting to pay a marble bust for a glass of wine." You simply nod. It's late, very late. And the line between reality and the intoxicating dream of the feast has long since dissolved. Your job isn't to stop it, but to ensure it unfolds stylishly and without permanent damage. You adjust a lamp here, subtly direct a server there, always gliding through the shadows, a silent guardian of sophisticated debauchery. This is what you live for, the unspoken challenge, the subtle triumph over the potential for true disaster. And as the night deepens, you know that the true stories, the ones that will be whispered for weeks, are just beginning to unfold. The ones that historians will never fully grasp in their grand narratives. As the first faint hints of dawn begin to smudge the eastern sky, painting the windows with a pale, ethereal light, the grand Roman feast slowly, inevitably, winds down. The boisterous laughter has softened to contented murmurs, the energetic music has dwindled to a gentle, almost meditative hum from the last few weary musicians. You, Quintus, are still on your feet, though every muscle aches and your mind feels as though it's been put through a wine press. The air is thick with the lingering scent of old wine, extinguished lamps, and the faint, sweet odour of exhaustion. This is the long tale of the party, the final, often messy act of the Roman spectacle. Guests once vibrant and animated are now draped across couches like discarded togas, their snores echoing softly in the vast hall. Some are still engaged in hushed, intimate conversations, their voices barely audible, their proximity suggesting secrets shared under the cloak of night. Others are simply staring blankly at the ceiling, their minds adrift in the hazy aftermath of extreme indulgence. You notice a few couples have discreetly vanished, their vacant couches a testament to the success of the night's more intimate ambitions. You approve. A truly good host facilitates all forms of pleasure. Your attention shifts to the immediate aftermath, the subtle signs of the evening's unraveling. Discarded garlands lie strewn across the mosaic floor like fallen flowers. Empty wine goblets, some overturned, glint dully in the fading lamplight. A half-eaten roasted dormouse, forgotten in the fervour, rests forlornly on a platter. You begin to mentally catalogue the damage, the silent inventory of a night lived to the fullest. The sheer scale of waste after such events is rarely documented, a silent testament to Roman excess. You instruct your slaves to begin the painstaking process of tidying. They move with practiced efficiency, their movements quiet and respectful, like shadows gliding through the pre-dawn light. They collect the discarded togas, fold the rumpled cushions, and meticulously sweep away the scattered olive pits and fruit remnants. The air fills with the faint, welcome scent of sweeping dust, and the distant murmur of water as the fountain slaves begin their work. This is the unspoken labor, the silent army that cleans up the beautiful mess, a stark contrast to the opulence they serve. You spot Senator Piso, surprisingly, still awake and lucid. He's sitting alone, sipping a final, very small, very diluted glass of wine, a thoughtful expression on his face. He catches your eye and offers a faint, appreciative nod. "A magnificent evening, Quintus," he murmurs, his voice a little hoarse, from singing. "Truly a night that will be spoken of for many moons." You offer a polite, tired smile in return. High praise from him is rare, and you'll cherish it, even if it comes wrapped in the exhaustion of 100 such nights. A rare historical insight. Even the most powerful Romans, in their moments of quiet reflection, would acknowledge the artistry of those who served them. The lyre player, having sobered up considerably, is now carefully packing away his instrument, his face etched with weary satisfaction. He gives you a small, genuine smile. "Thank you, Quintus," he says. "A good night for music." You nod. The harmony, though fleeting, was worth it. You observe the few remaining guests making their slow, dignified exits. Some are leaning heavily on slaves, others are attempting to walk in a straight line, largely unsuccessfully. A few are still, attempting to conduct philosophical debates with their departing companions, their voices fading into the quiet Roman dawn. You stand at the entrance, a silent sentinel bidding them farewell. The lingering perfumes of the night still cling to their robes, a fragrant echo of the indulgence they have just experienced. Finally, the last guest departs, leaving behind a silence that, though heavy, is also strangely peaceful. The grand villa, once throbbing with life, now seems to exhale, settling back into its quiet majesty. The oil lamps flicker and die, one by one, leaving the atrium in a soft, ethereal gloom. You walk through the deserted halls, your footsteps echoing hollowly, a stark contrast to the clamour of hours before. You run a hand over a cool marble column, feeling the smooth stone beneath your fingers. The evidence of the night's revelry is everywhere. A misplaced sandal, a spilled amphora, the faint scent of myrrh and sweat. But the vibrant energy is gone, replaced by a profound, weary calm. You make your way to your small, humble room, the silence a balm after the sensory assault of the past 12 hours. You strip off your tunic, the linen clinging to your skin, and pour yourself a small cup of plain water. It tastes like heaven. You sit on your mat, gazing out at the emerging dawn, the sky lightening from charcoal to soft grey, then to a delicate
rose. You have faced the chaos, managed the egos, navigated the pitfalls, and emerged, not unscathed, but intact. The house is quiet now. The feast is over. And you, Quintus, are, for a brief moment, simply a man, exhausted, triumphant, and profoundly, utterly alone.
The silence in your small room is a profound thing, a stark contrast to the cacophony you've just orchestrated. You, Quintus, lean against the cool plaster wall, every muscle in your body singing with exhaustion. Your mind, however, is still, buzzing, replaying scenes from the night like a fast-forwarded scroll. Senator Piso's off-key singing, the mime twins and their seafood wrestling, the senator confessing his love to an olive, each moment, however absurd, is now etched into the tapestry of your experience. You are an archivist of debauchery, a collector of scandalous whispers and forgotten laughter. You find yourself replaying the near disasters, the moments where the fragile veneer of your planning threatened to crack. The flying silver cup, the garden snake panic, the toppling wine amphorae. Each one a tiny heart attack, deftly averted. You remember the cold sweat that prickled your skin, the subtle adjustments you made, the swift, silent commands that kept the ship from sinking. This isn't just about throwing a party. It's about crisis management on a grand scale, a constant mental chess game where reputation, and sometimes more, is the prize. You are a master of improvisation, a ninja of nuances. Historians often miss the quiet, unwritten heroics of these behind-the-scenes figures, focusing instead on the grand pronouncements of emperors and generals. You think of the staff, your loyal legion of silent workers, the fan-bearers, their arms surely aching, the cup-bearers whose feet must be bruised from miles of silent walking, the head cook who likely collapsed amidst his pots and pans, dreaming of perfectly stuffed dormice. They are the unseen engine, the true unsung heroes of every lavish Roman feast, their diligence often taken for granted by the elite they serve. You make a mental note to discreetly ensure they receive an extra ration of lentils and perhaps a small bonus of wine tomorrow. A good commander takes care of his troops, even when they are technically property. You also reflect on the guests themselves, the powerful, the demanding, the utterly ridiculous. You've seen them stripped bare, not just of their togas, but of their pretenses, their carefully constructed public personas, dissolving under the influence of wine and uninhibited revelry. The arrogant become bumbling, the stoic become sentimental, the dignified become utterly absurd. It's a strange, almost voyeuristic privilege to witness such transformations. You know their true selves, their weaknesses, their hidden desires, far better than most, and in this knowledge there is a quiet, subtle power. It's a fascinating truth about Roman society. The feasts were as much about revealing character as they were about indulging appetites. You consider the lasting impact of the night, not just the physical mess which your slaves will spend days cleaning, but the social ripples. Will Senator Piso's singing become a new, embarrassing anecdote whispered in the forum? Will the merchant's Dionysian dance be recounted with glee at the baths? Will the poet's attempt to climb the bust of Augustus be remembered as a moment of artistic genius or drunken folly? These events, seemingly trivial, often shape the social landscape of Roman high society, fueling gossip, forging new alliances, and cementing rivalries. You, Quintus, are not just a planner. You are a weaver of social fabric, however delicate and easily torn. You close your eyes, inhaling deeply, and the scent of rose oil and stale wine still lingers faintly in your nostrils, a memory of the beautiful, controlled chaos you orchestrated. You allow yourself a small, private smile. You survived. You triumphed. You navigated the treacherous currents of Roman indulgence, avoiding every hidden rock and every social whirlpool. It was a good night, a truly, utterly Roman night. And as the first rays of dawn begin to filter through your small window, casting a faint, hopeful light on your meager surroundings, you know that this is your life. This is your calling. You roll over on your mat, trying to find a comfortable position, but your mind is already drifting, not into sleep, but into the future. You are a planner, after all, a strategist. And even in this moment of profound exhaustion, your brain, against your will, is already beginning to churn. The Roman dawn, a gentle, almost timid blush of pink and gold, begins to creep over the rooftops, painting the world in soft, hopeful hues. You, Quintus, are still awake, lying on your mat, the profound exhaustion of the night, battling with the relentless hum of your planning mind. The villa is finally silent, a vast, echoing space that seems to breathe a sigh of relief after the
night's excesses. Yet, even in this quiet, you find yourself already thinking about the next banquet, the next challenge, the next tightrope walk across the chasm of Roman aristocratic whims. Your thoughts drift to the sheer, unbridled unpredictability of it all.
You can plan for every contingency, the right amount of wine, the freshest oysters, the most entertaining musicians. But you can never truly account for the human element, the sudden outbursts of emotion, the unexpected romantic entanglements, the spontaneous and often terrible decisions made under the influence of too much valerian. That's where the true artistry lies, you muse, in the ability to pivot, to improvise, to turn potential disaster into an amusing anecdote. It's a truth rarely discussed in Roman history, the constant improvisation required in daily life, far removed from the grand narratives of emperors and empires. You imagine the whispers that will ripple through the city tomorrow, not the official pronouncements from the forum, but the juicy, unofficial gossip exchanged at the baths, in the marketplace, and within the hushed confines of other wealthy villas. Did you hear about Senator Piso's singing? And the gladiator trivia game? Utterly scandalous. Your feast will become part of the city's oral history, a fleeting but vivid chapter in the ongoing saga of Roman social life. You are not just a planner, you are a quiet chronicler, an architect of fleeting legends. You think of the next client, already a shadow forming in your mind. Will they be as demanding as your current patron? Will their wives have even more outlandish complaints about the color of the rose petals? Will their guests include a man who tries to marry a statue of Jupiter, or perhaps a woman who insists on eating all her food with her feet? The possibilities are endless, and each one presents a new, exciting challenge. The constant evolution of Roman tastes and demands meant that your job was never truly static. There was always a new form of entertainment, a new exotic dish to source. Perhaps the next feast will require a live animal display, a small leopard led on a leash, or even a trained monkey that recites Latin verse. You've heard rumors of such things, and while they fill you with a certain professional dread, they also ignite a spark of creativity. How would you ensure the leopard doesn't eat a senator? How would you train the monkey to avoid the garum? These are the fascinating, often absurd questions that keep your mind perpetually active, even in the stillness of dawn. You picture the empty triclinium, now silent and still, awaiting the clean-up crew. The ghosts of laughter and whispered secrets still linger, a faint echo of the night's revelry. You will supervise the meticulous cleaning, ensuring every stain is scrubbed, every piece of silver polished, every cushion fluffed. And then the cycle will begin anew. Fresh invitations, new guest lists, new crises to avert, new triumphs to orchestrate. Your life, Quintus, is a continuous loop of preparation, chaos, and calm, each feast a universe unto itself. You close your eyes, the last vestiges of sleep finally claiming you. You are Quintus, the architect of Roman indulgence, the keeper of secrets, the silent master of ceremonies. And as the first rays of the Roman sun finally break through the window, illuminating your modest room, you dream not of grand victories or philosophical debates, but of perfectly placed olives, perfectly chilled wine, and the sweet, fleeting silence before the next storm of revelry. Your work is never truly done. It simply pauses, waiting for the next opportunity to weave another tapestry of Roman delight and disarray. The Roman dawn, a gentle, almost timid blush of pink and gold, begins to creep over the rooftops, painting the world in soft, hopeful hues. The cacophony of the feast has long since faded, replaced by the profound, comforting silence of a city slowly stirring to life. You, Quintus, lie still on your mat, your body heavy with the exhaustion of a night spent orchestrating pure, unadulterated
Chaos.
but your mind, ever restless, ever planning, is already drifting, not into the depths of slumber, but into the quiet anticipation of what comes next. The images of the night swirl and fade, the shimmering silks, the gleam of silver, the rich, heady scent of myrrh and spiced wine. You remember the laughter, the whispers, the passionate arguments, the moments of utter absurdity that made you question the sanity of the world you inhabited. And then you remember the subtle triumphs, the averted disasters, the perfectly timed interventions, the silent nods that kept the grand machine of revelry running smoothly. You are the architect of fleeting pleasure, the master of moments, and your legacy is written not in stone, but in the memories of 1,000 indulgent smiles. Now, as the world outside begins to hum with the quiet promise of a new day, let your own mind drift. Let the gentle whispers of this story, the scent of ancient Roman spices, and the rhythmic calm of the night lull you into a deep, peaceful sleep. Your own triumphs, your own quiet moments of genius await you in the quietude of your dreams. Close your eyes, let your breath deepen, and surrender to the soothing stillness that follows even the grandest of Roman feasts. End of script.
Sweet dreams, thank you.